Welcome to the Ecommerce Marketing Podcast, the highly rated digital marketing podcast that provides weekly digital marketing tips and strategies from some of the world's top digital marketers and e-commerce entrepreneurs that will help you take your digital marketing to the next level. Sit back and enjoy this power-packed episode hosted by Arlen Robinson, who is an e-commerce entrepreneur and digital marketing expert with over 20 years of experience. Hey, e-commerce marketing podcast listener. Are you looking to increase traffic and sales to your website? You can do this by launching your own affiliate program. Just visit getosi.com and sign up for a free trial today. That's getosi.com. Now get ready to hear from your e-commerce marketing expert of the week as they drill down to give you details on marketing strategies that can help grow your business.
Welcome back to the Ecommerce Marketing Podcast, everyone. My name is Arlen and I am your host. And today we have a very special guest, Nigel Thomas, who is the current CEO of Alpha Inbound, a performance marketing agency that helps D2C brands find more customers through paid advertising. So having scaled 2 marketing agencies from scratch to 7 figures in the last 3 years and leading his team to spend over $100 million on ads for some of the biggest D2C brands, Nigel is a true bred entrepreneur with a strong personality and a growing following of over 36,000 people on LinkedIn. He's on track to become one of the market leaders of the D2C and branding industry. Welcome to the podcast, Nigel.
Wow, that's a big introduction. Hopefully I can back it up. Pressure's on.
Well, I'm sure you will. Yeah, that's quite some accomplishments there for sure. What you've been doing, in the following that you've been able to amass as well. It's not easy to do for sure. I've been in the business over 20 years and yeah, my following on LinkedIn is nowhere near yours. So I think I got a little bit of work to do.
I'm definitely learning from you guys on the business side. Don't worry. Always a student.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Well, I'm excited to talk to you today. We're going to be diving deep into an area that I'm very familiar with, and I know you are as well. And of course, that's performance marketing. And, you're going to be giving us some great actionable tips and strategies on how any e-commerce business can utilize performance marketing to, of course, increase their profit and sales, which is really always the bottom line when it comes to growing a business. But before we do get into all of that, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your background and, specifically how you got into what you're doing today?
Yeah, sure. So back in 2016, or it was actually 2018, it was the rise of Facebook ads. And even though you said in the intro, true bred entrepreneur, at 26 years old, I hadn't realized that. I was in a 9-to-5 job, actually working as a cost manager in the construction industry. And I had a feeling that I just wasn't right for that environment. And I was just keeping myself to myself. And it was just getting to the point where I saw the manager who was 20 years ahead of me. And I was thinking to myself, okay, so if I stay in this job, get the promotions, I will eventually become that guy. Do I want his life? Right. He was a pretty bitter, twisted guy. He wasn't happy. And to be honest, a lot of people in the construction industry aren't. It's a very hard business. It's very stressed, and most people are just there for the paycheck. Right. Now, on the side, I started getting some freelance clients on Upwork because of the rise of Facebook ads, right? This was back in the day, by the way, where you could slap up some images in Canva and run ads to the homepage and get a 6x return on ad spend. The good old days. Right. I know for any listeners, it's painful hearing that, and it's a lot harder these days, which we'll get onto the new strategies. But yeah, basically, I just got enough income to quit my job, and I took the plunge, and that's when, I became an entrepreneur. And, there were 2 agencies that I built, and ultimately those 2 failed for one reason or another. And then I joined Alpha Inbound in 2021. At the time, the agency was doing about $5,000 a month in revenue. And I made a promise to the founder. I said to him, I'll get this agency to $100,000 in revenue. I didn't know exactly how I was going to do it. I just know I wouldn't stop until I did. And this month, 2 years on, we've hit, well, it's actually about 124, 128,000 in revenue. So we've now achieved that target. So obviously that's quite good to hit that milestone.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've learned a hell of a lot. We've worked with some of the best brands, spent over 100 million on ads. And, it's a hard industry. But as I always say, and I'm sure, you have the same philosophy with what you're building, is that even when the market's hard, if we are true bred entrepreneurs, then we should be able to problem solve. And the harder the market is, the more problems there are. So for me, I'm excited because a lot of problems to solve.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. And, those accomplishments that you've made with the firms that you're dealing with are some that aren't easy to accomplish, by a marketing agency. I've had plenty of marketing agencies on that, don't produce numbers anywhere near that. And so, it's definitely good to hear. And it's great that you're, kind of well on your way to, continually exceed those numbers, for sure. Of course, today we're going to be talking about performance marketing. So I want to kind of start off with just kind of, if you can give a brief explanation of performance marketing and really its importance for D2C brands today.
Yeah, so obviously right now, at the time recording, there's a lot of focus on profit and retention. And this is because, we're in somewhat of a bear market. So it goes without saying we need to look at our cash and make sure, we're in the right position to continue growth. But the problem is that if you don't get new customers, regardless of how much you make per customer, you're still not going to grow as a business, right? So I think the thing is that ultimately it's a lot harder, but it is possible. We're seeing with the right strategies implemented, which I can get to, stronger performance than ever on Facebook. Now, a lot of things have changed since 2017, but here's one thing I'll say. The problem is that because, like I said, it was so easy back then, just running random images to a homepage and getting such great returns, that was an unrealistic market condition. But because it was unrealistic and people didn't realize that at the time, all these new e-commerce brands that flooded the market, they built their entire unit economics and supply chains on unrealistic market conditions. So now things have reset. This is normal now. But the problem is they haven't changed all of their unit economics. So obviously their margins for a lot of the brands are razor thin. Some of them aren't, and some of them adapted, the smart ones, and they're now eating up more market share. But for a lot of them, they're fighting against the fact that, they didn't adapt fast enough. So, we can talk about the numbers we look at, we can talk about the strategies, but ultimately what I'll say is if you don't find new customers, no matter how good your retention is, and by the way, I'm a massive believer in having a great customer experience and having a really good lifetime value. If you can't keep your customers, you haven't got a business. But having said that, you still need new blood, new oxygen to be able to grow more and eat up more market share. If you can't figure out how to do that, and obviously performance marketing is just a way to accelerate that. That's why we can pay for more reach on these platforms. If you can't figure out a way to do that, you're going to stagnate as a business. So I think it's just as important as it always was. It's just fundamental as a business. You need to find new customers.
Yeah, exactly. There's multiple things, of course, that you have to do as a business. A lot of times, on the podcast, I've talked to other companies and other marketing agencies that will say, yeah, like you say, you're a big fan of customer experience and looking at a site, an e-commerce brand's current site. How are they converting once customers are there? So that's still very important. But the bottom line is, you'll have nobody to convert if you're not bringing anybody to the site.
Yeah.
So you've always got to keep that funnel going, no matter what. And then of course, secondarily, definitely, or maybe even first, before you do that, you'd of course do that to get the customer experience, your conversion rate down so that, you're getting people into your funnel and you're converting as many as possible.
I'd also say that there's a quote from Abraham Lincoln, which I love, which is, he said this himself. If he had 6 hours to chop down a tree, he'd spend the first 4 hours sharpening his axe. And I think that's actually the way that you should acquire customers now. Okay. A lot in the past, a lot of brands just had cookie cutter strategies and just ran into it. Right. Now you actually need to plan. You need to get, a sharp axe, and that sharp axe in this game is really good content, is a really good customer journey, and is an understanding of your unit economics. So you can scale not only at the start, but you can maintain that when you get diminishing returns. We can go into all of those things, but I think off the bat, there's a lot more strategy needed now. You can't just dive into it. You need a foundation to build upon. Otherwise, you're basically gambling, because that's what paid advertising is if you don't know what you're doing. And by the way, Facebook are going to take your money all day, every day. They don't care.
Right. Yeah. They don't care. They don't care about your return as long as they're getting theirs.
They care about their business. And by the way, they care a lot more now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. For sure. For sure. That's really true. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And that's a great quote I hadn't heard from Abraham Lincoln. You got to spend, if you got 6 hours to cut down that tree, 4 hours need to be sharpening that axe. And, but you could relate that to just all aspects of business, into life even. So excellent quote there. Now, everybody knows in marketing that, and in business, that our entrepreneurs know that there have been a ton of recent tech advancements, in our world, the whole rise of AI, all of these solutions that are making it easier to generate content, you name it. There's just a boom that's happened this past year. Now, how have all of these rising advancements influenced the strategy that you guys have for creating this inbound and performance marketing for your customers? And, where do you see these future trends heading?
Yeah, so after iOS 14, and this is the same for most agencies, I know a lot of agency owners who have experienced this in the performance marketing space, to keep our clients, really, even though we're getting paid to run ads and create content, we were spending 50% of our time on attribution. And for a lot of companies, that hasn't changed. From the conversations that I have with founders of D2C brands, they're more confused than ever. There's lots of great technologies. There's also a lot of ones that aren't so great, and there's a lot of smoke and mirrors. And I think it's just got to the point now where people don't know what the truth is anymore. So I think actually my way of looking at it is focusing on the fundamentals, focusing on, like I said, the unit economics, focusing on great content, focusing on understanding your customer and making sure that you're using first-party data to really create customized advertising, which will speak to a specific demographic. And then obviously the other thing, having a great product. Is obviously extremely important. A lot of brands don't, and they focus on marketing and don't have a great product. And then, of course, customer experience. So there are some great apps in terms of helping with conversion, and there's a few of attribution. But I also think, we audit brands all the time. They have like 90 apps in their Shopify store. And I'm asking them, so what does that do? What does that do? And they're just like, yeah, we don't really know. But, they're paying their monthly subscription every month. And I think brands are more confused than ever, which is actually why agencies, the ones that, are going to do well in these next few years, they need to come in, they need to give advice and just streamline everything. And it's the same, by the way, it's the same with ad accounts. We were actually auditing a brand the other day, who are really struggling, spending anywhere between $500,000 to $800,000 a month on ads. And they have no idea what's going on their ad account. And when we had a look, it's no surprise. There's just like hundreds and hundreds of tests, no proper structure. And actually, if we work with them, which we put in a proposal now, what we're going to do is we're just going to start a fresh ad account and just start the whole thing from scratch. And I think a lot of brands can take something from that. You need to get more methodical and focus and just cut through the noise and focus on the fundamentals.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, that's so true. It just sounds like with the rise of all of these tech solutions and apps and trends, I think, like you said, it's kind of more important than ever to not really get caught up in a lot of these, because a lot of them are fleeting. A lot of these trends that pop up, these apps, they're here today, gone tomorrow. And I think, like what you're saying, is a brand really can't lose sight of the core fundamentals, making sure they provide a great product, making sure they have solid content, that they're looking and trying to reach the right audience. Because a lot of these fancy tools and apps can be a distraction. Like you said, you've had different businesses and clients that you've been dealing with where they got 90 apps tied to their store, and you're like, all right, what is what is all of this for? Is it even moving the needle?
Yeah, and at the end of the day, you've got to think about. For me, I always think about things from a first principle perspective.
Yeah.
I know some of the founders of some of these apps, and they're great people that, they really do want to help the world. But ultimately, just like for the brands, those apps are incentivized themselves to make money for themselves. If you fail as the business, they carry on. So, and I think a lot of people, need to understand that. Obviously, they need to help their customers out, but usually, these SaaS products, they've got tens of thousands of customers. And there are some that, really do work closely with their clients. But in a lot of cases, if you've not thought about how it's helping your specific business, you can just get carried away in the noise. And if we talk specifically about attribution, the cost opportunity, and obviously this has been a big thing the last few years, of not knowing your customer attribution to 100% accuracy is a really big thing. However, the cost opportunity of focusing all of your time and attention trying to figure out 100% accuracy and not focusing on the fundamentals of business is equally as big of a problem. And that's what I've started to see. And by the way, let's debunk one myth now. Attribution prior to iOS 14 was never 100% accurate. But guess what? People didn't care back then because it was so easy. Now it's a lot harder. And like I said, because of the margins and everything, people all of a sudden want to know every single thing about the attribution side, when really the truth is the Shopify sales data. And that's really what we need to focus on. So there are some great tools out there, but again, it's just making sure you don't get lost in the noise and focus on the fundamentals.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, definitely. Very well said. I'm always a big advocate of lessons learned, businesses learning lessons from, mistakes of others. Because that's really kind of where you really are able to grow, either the lessons you're learning from the mistakes you've made or the mistakes of others. So what would you say are some of the common challenges in performance marketing for D2C brands, and how do you as a company at Alpha Inbound address them with your clients?
Yeah, so one of the big things was that we were just a Facebook ad agency. So a lot of the brands we worked with, we were either relying on them for their content, or we were working with, another agency or third party that they'd hired to do their content. The same was said for the CRO side. So, if we talk about the three pillars of customer acquisition on performance marketing, you've got the content, which goes out into the ad platforms. You've obviously got the media buying, which happens in the back end of the ad platform. And then you've got, the site experience, the CRO, conversion rate optimization. Now, a lot of brands hire different third parties for all three of these different things. And the problem is again, when we talk about being incentivized, all of those third parties and agencies are all incentivized to keep their clients. And they've all got their own best practices. They've all got their own way of doing business that they all bring to the table. So they don't collaborate with each other. And really, the incentive should be growing the brand. Now, what happens there in terms of for the customer is a disjointed customer experience. So you have some content that goes out, and then the media buying strategy isn't related to that. And then when they get to the website, it isn't related to the content they've just seen on the ad. And obviously, from the customer side of things, they don't have any idea that this brand's working with all these different third parties. They just see a disjointed customer experience. And by the way, it goes even further. When they get the email marketing, when they get the product packaging to themselves, if you want to build a brand, as we know, from Robert Cialdini and his, 6 principles of persuasion, one of the biggest things is consistency. And a lot of brands don't have that consistency. So bearing that in mind and seeing how Facebook, with obviously the introduction of more AI and letting the algorithm do the work, if we look at, for example, the Advantage Plus campaign, where you can't really do any targeting inside of it. For brands who don't know what that is, it's basically just a new campaign where Facebook does all the targeting for you. You just upload the content, which is a sign of what's to come. we saw that, content really is king. We need to take control of that. So we brought the content in-house, and recently we also brought parts of the CRO in-house. So now what we can do is we can work together with brands, put together a macro strategy, get rid of all the headaches of then having to talk to all these third parties, but most importantly, create a congruent experience to make sure that, the customer gets that consistency of the brand. And obviously from us, we're now making decisions across all of those pillars. So we're not just in the ad account, just, moving things around. We're looking at the whole funnel start to finish. And that gives us a big competitive advantage in the marketing agency space. But most importantly, it's incentivized to help the brands.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. I can definitely see that gives you the kind of the broader picture to be able to make those right decisions, which kind of leads me to my next question. With all of these different marketing channels that are out there for brands to kind of get out, I mean, what would you say a focus should be? Should it be a single marketing channel? Let's say a brand is really 90% of their sales are coming from Google ad campaigns, but they're getting some from other campaigns.
Yeah.
Do they need to just wholly focus on that? Or would you say a multi-channel approach is better? And, as your agency, how do you guys usually tailor your strategies?
Yeah, so just for context, we actually focus on the health and wellness space. So, supplement brands, skincare brands, we work with a few CBD brands too. And the reason why that is because they've got repeat customers, by default, because people are on subscriptions to those products. So it means the unit economics are more geared towards they can break even on the front end because they know on the back end they're going to make up that money. And I think the important thing, and I really want to stress this because not enough people talk about this in our industry, how these platforms work is their auction systems. So when everyone's saying, oh, what can we do to lower the CPA? What can we do to increase the ROAS? Actually, if you really want to win, you need to increase the CPA because then you're going to be able to outbid your competition. The way you obviously do that is with back-end unit economics. Mm-hmm. Now, in terms of answering your question, it really depends on the product because for Instagram and Facebook, there's certain products which will naturally go more viral. For example, why do people go onto Facebook? They don't go on there to buy products. They go on there to socialize with their friends. So if I've got a product for dogs, for example, or pets, that's something that naturally people are socially connected to and they're going to want to share out with their friends. Compared to, let's say, I don't know, a sofa, for example. I mean, you can be creative, but also you want to be smart. So I'd say, is your product that you actually think someone would share with their friends? Because ultimately, what you need to try and do is put a strategy together that gets users to stay on the platforms longer. Because the more you do that, you're basically playing to the rules of Facebook. Because obviously, the more people stay on those platforms, the more that, they have people to advertise to, which is their entire business model. So I think it really does depend on the product, but I would also take a very focused approach. I see a lot of brands and a lot of them come to me and say, hey, Nigel, we've got 10K to spend on ads. Can we do Facebook? Can we do a bit of Google and a bit of TikTok? And I say to them, well, look, if you want to be successful, you need to just focus on one channel. For a lot of them, it is, when I say Facebook, by the way, I mean Meta, which is Facebook and Instagram, for the sake of names. But if you want to crack Facebook, you probably need at least 5,000 to 10,000, depending on what your average order value is. Mm-hmm. Focus on one SKU, by the way, your hero product, which has the most social proof, which has the best unit economics, and you've got a strong supply chain for, and then try and crack that. And then usually what we see is a symbiosis with Google, because obviously that will increase search volume because Facebook ultimately is a discovery platform. And then you can start, increasing your Google ads. Typically what we see is Google will be twice the return in terms of return on investment of the ad spend, but the budgets will be slightly lower because it's, less discovery. So scale from what we've seen, the brands we work with is still better on Meta. But again, it does somewhat depend on the product. Then TikTok, that algorithm just isn't quite as mature. So it's more of a complex strategy. It's very top of funnel. A lot of brands, what they've tried to do is they've tried to take their Meta strategy and dump it onto TikTok, That's just not how that platform works at all. So what you need to do is you need to see that as topping up your awareness in the audience, and then see how it impacts all the other channels. And that's where, we like to try and work with brands and educate them on the North Star being, marketing efficiency ratio or blended return across all the channels, instead of looking at channel specific. Because the last thing I'll say on that is a lot of brands, when they look at, we need to get this on Facebook ROAS, and then they'll see Google being higher because obviously of what I just talked about. They don't think about the fact that, let's just say, as a customer that's named John, he sees a product on Facebook. For whatever reason, he doesn't buy it. He's now got awareness. He goes to buy that product through Google ads 2 weeks later. And then obviously, if you look at the single channel attribution, it makes sense to invest into Google. But now you're cutting out the discovery channel, which actually brought you John in the first place. And a lot of brands don't understand that. So you need to look at everything from a blended perspective. But at the start, to get things going, you need focus. And another reason why is because these platforms need data. And at the end of the day, I need to just say this because not enough people taught this truth. It's pay to play. You need money to make money. And if you're not in a position where you can invest, really, you need an average order value that's at least $50. Let's just get that one out there. So you need to work your unit economics so you can have that. And once you've got that, if you're not willing to invest at least $5,000 a month, honestly, I'd probably look at a more organic strategy, potentially through influencers or through your own personal brand. TikTok, there is ways to do that. But in terms of performance marketing, it's pay to play. And it's more that way now than it ever was. But once you've got the unit economics in place, it really is putting a machine together that really can scale fast. And ultimately, you can grow organically. What I like to say to people is you're essentially on the highway and you're going into the fast lane. That's what performance marketing is. You can do it organically, but this is the way where we're 10x we're 20x in the growth, because we manipulate the numbers around and we basically pay for more reach in these platforms. So a very long-winded answer, but it's very complex and it really depends on the brand. But I think there's a few realizations, and they're from conversations. I've spoken to over 1,000 owners in the last 5 years, and they're the conversations that often come up.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Yeah, it really, like you said, coming down to the brand that you're dealing with, it is complex. There's no easy answer, to that. A lot of it also has to deal with, and I'm glad you mentioned it, with a lot of these platforms, if you're spending, like you said, less than $5,000 in a given period, then it's tough. It's really tough to see it making any sense. You may get some sales, you may get a little bit of awareness if you're doing less than that, but I think you're right. If you're looking at less than 5,000, it's best to focus just on the organic.
And then you've got the agency fees on top of that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that adds up. And so, makes sense. You got to have the budget to be able to make it work, make sense for sure. Well, Nigel, as we get ready to wrap things up, I wanted to see if you could highlight maybe some emerging trends that you've seen in performance marketing. And how is your brand and your agency preparing for these trends?
So obviously, the hot topic in town right now is AI. And look, I think like anything, it really is a topic that's going viral right now, and it's obviously a bit of a bubble. So I think it will die down. And I just want to put it out there to all brands. Copywriters with 15, 20 years experience, there's still no competition versus real copywriters and AI. So sure, they can be somewhat of an assistant to help generate ideas. But if you have a really good copywriter, it's still a massive competitive advantage. So really lean into that, because that will, make you stand out. But if we look at where AI is going to go in the next 5-10 years, then I think it's more about focusing on the inputs. So let's just say these AI models become more and more conscious to the point where they are as good as copywriters, or obviously at some point they're going to be better. What the brands that have more data of their actual customers are the ones that are going to win. So what we're focusing on now, and what I recommend for brands, is focus on first-party data capture. So, your surveys, talking to your customers, making sure that, your customer support team, you see them as a real sales channel, and every single option you have to collect customer data, get it. But don't just take it, actually house it in a strategic format and separate them into things. For example, testimonials, the objections that your customers have around buying your products, and also ask the right questions. If you've got a survey, and by the way, you can do pre-purchase surveys as well as post-purchase surveys. A lot of brands don't realize that, and a lot more people will fill those out. You can ask people, why didn't you buy more products? What was potentially stopping you from buying this product? And if you've got a lot of traffic hitting your website, and obviously you're investing in paid advertising, that's a lot of opportunity right there. And even if you just house it in a simple spreadsheet, in the next few years, when these AI models become more and more complex, and to the point where you can literally just get all of your data, again, if it's housed correctly, you need to make sure it's housed correctly, and dump it into an AI model. Effectively, probably what's going to happen is it will just spit out a landing page, spit out some content, and spit out an entire customer journey that will literally just, dominate the news feeds and be incredible for your brand. But you need the right inputs. Just as you know better than me in the software space, as they say, garbage in, garbage out. So I think the way to get ahead now, whilst everyone gets caught up in the whole hype of AI, is focus on first-party data. And that's where you'll see the biggest competitive advantage when the AI models are actually ready to go. And even, by the way, forget AI for a second. If you have the best first-party data, you can create the best content. And you can essentially be spending, or you could be a lot more efficient with your spend. And, something that we do is we create customized landing pages per product, per hero product, and then split test variations within those products. And then the content we make is specific to those landing pages. So it's all congruent. And that's how you can become a lot more efficient. But without the research, without the first party data in the first place, you're never going to be able to get those kind of outputs. So my message is first party data, collect more of it, and focus more on your customers.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, some great advice. And I definitely agree with that. It's hard not to kind of get caught up in the hype of the AI, and, they can still be utilized at this time, but you mentioned some key things. It's still in their infancy right now. The Chat GPT, it's early, Bard, Google's Bard, all of these different AI tools are very young. Just a few years, like you said, it is going to be at a point where, like you said, you give it a few inputs based on the data you've already collected from your touch points and input it can create an ideal landing page, an ideal funnel flow with just prompting it with just a few data points. And so, yeah, it kind of gets me thinking to, what all brands really need to do and focus on this data collection, that first party data. And then at every touch point, whether it's customer service, whether it's their initial touch point on your website, live chat, whatever it is, you got to collect it, you got to house it correctly. And then, you'll be able to utilize it effectively later on once these AI tools are more mature. Well, yeah, this has been an awesome conversation, Nigel. I definitely appreciate you coming on. I've learned a lot about performance marketing, and I know our listeners have as well. And, it's definitely a hot market that's not going, or a hot marketing channel, that's really not going anywhere. But lastly, before we do let you go, I always like to switch gears just so our listeners and viewers can get to know you just a little bit better. So if you don't mind sharing one closing fun fact about yourself that you think we'd be interested to know.
Yeah. When is this podcast going out?
With 1 week from today, most likely. Well, yeah, about next week sometime, the beginning of next week.
Okay. So yeah, one fun fact is that I'm actually I'm going to start building a community, and I'll be releasing that information on LinkedIn. And this is going to be a community, I'm going to build a newsletter, podcast and everything. And basically to help, founders with all the information that I've learned over the last 5 years, help them be more successful. And I've been working a lot in the background. And yeah, as we go into the new year, that's going to be my full-time focus.
Okay.
So yeah, that's something I'm really excited about. and I'm going to be sharing more on LinkedIn as well as the other channels that I focus on. So it is still business, but at the end of the day, for me, I'm a very obsessive personality. So I know a lot of people talk about the work and life balance kind of relationship. For me, it's all intertwined. So, I live my work, I live and breathe it, and I love what I do. So I'm grateful.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And I definitely encourage people to check you out on LinkedIn and look out for this community that you're going to be developing. Very timely as well. The previous podcast that we just published this week, a gentleman that was on, we talked about community-led growth and the role of community. It's really very big these days and creating that community and growing your brand awareness around a community that you're supporting, that you're conscious about, where you're not just creating it just to sell products. Of course, that's the ultimate goal, but you're really concerned about the community and the well-being of the community. Have that mindset. I think that's kind of when the good things can happen to you, where, the karma, so to speak, will come back your way.
Yeah, 100%. Whether it's B2B or D2C, it's all human to human, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Yeah, exactly. At the end of the day. Well, Nigel, thank you for sharing that. Appreciate that. But lastly, before we let you go, aside from like LinkedIn, we mentioned, is there any other way for our listeners and viewers to get in touch with you if they want to pick your brain anymore about performance marketing?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you're an e-commerce brand that is looking to scale up their paid advertising and you feel like you're at that growth stage, you can head over to alphainbound.com and book in a free marketing audit. Actually, something we released very recently is as part of that audit, we also have a completely customized cost modeling, like part of the audit, where we basically get all the financials in terms of like actual financials, including profit margins, cost of goods, everything, and put them into, a cost model, and then see across the channels using all of the benchmarks that we have after spending, all this money in advertising, to see what channel is most efficient and really giving them a strategic growth roadmap, as well as analyzing their entire customer journey, giving them content, feedback on their content, and then putting together, a really customized strategy. So alphainbound.com if you want to book in a call and do that. A lot of brands, I mean, I'll be honest, the way we were able to scale the agency to where it was is I actually interviewed, I jumped on a little bit sneaky, but I jumped on with a lot of the big agencies when I came to Alpha Inbound, saw their sales process and saw that gap in the market was a due diligence up front that a lot of agencies don't do. The reason why we were able to win a lot of business is because our discovery process is one of the best in class in the industry. So I think that brands should check it out and they'll get a lot of value from it. But outside of that, Nigel Thomas, LinkedIn, I post there nearly every day. And any entrepreneurs, even if you're not founders in the D2C space, I'd love to connect with you. Always love having conversations with people who are passionate about what they're doing.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that, Nigel. We'll definitely have the link to your website in the show notes so people can reach out to your website and take a look at those offerings that you have for sure. Well, again, it's been awesome talking to you, Nigel. I've learned a lot, and we really appreciate you coming on to the Ecommerce Marketing Podcast.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Ecommerce Marketing Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share it with everyone you know. Are you looking to take your digital marketing to the next level, but are tired of weeding through countless YouTube videos with unproven and untrusted marketing strategies? Well, we have the answer for you. The More Sales Every Month online digital marketing course. In this information-packed course, you will learn effective keyword research, link building, content marketing, and much more to attract and convert your site visitors into paying customers. Just go to moresaleseverymonth.com and sign up today for a low one-time fee. In addition to this power-packed course, if you would like to get access to a growing repository of digital marketing articles, PDFs, and ebooks, check out getosi.com/resources and opt in to get full access to our library of priceless marketing information to help you take your digital marketing to the next level.